All right, let's move on and let's talk about Donald Trump and judges. Okay, and so let me just set this up a little bit. Folks who've listened to Rummana in the show a long time know that for years she was the Sun-Times courthouse reporter, and she spent a lot of years watching the interaction of prosecuting attorneys, criminal defense lawyers, defendants, jurors with Cook County judges. And Rummana, I've never seen the open display of disrespect that on that MAGA, particularly Trump, pretty much everybody, Tom Homan, who's Homeland Security, and many of his allies are showing for judges. And the story that I sent to you over the weekend had to do with the deportation of Venezuelans by Trump after a federal judge, had said, "Don't deport them," and they did it anyway. And so then the issue, and I sent this to you, the headline in the paper, I think it was the New York Times. The headline was, "White House denies violating judge's order in deporting Venezuelans." And then I wrote you, "I'll look on the bright side. At least they feel compelled to deny violating the order, as opposed to saying, yeah, we did it. What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah.
So I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever seen this amount of contempt directed at a judge when you were covering the Cook County courthouse?
No, I mean, people complained about judges and, they'd be like, one time I had this judge, who too, who yelled at me while I was sitting there in the courtroom. And I was just like, what? And he was really nice to me off the bench. And then, other prosecutors were just like, any defense attorneys are like, oh, he's like that. You know what I mean? They'll say stuff about judges, but, in court, or just like publicly, they're not going to go around and slam judges. These are lawyers that I know, and if they do like slam or they think they made the wrong decision in something, there's some sort of decorum. And you know what, honestly, there are some judges who you're just like, what are they thinking? Not to say that all judges like seem to make the right decision, but it's kind of like, there is a decorum. I've never seen anybody say like, well, judge, you said that, I don't care, and you do see people like arguing sometimes with the judges, and judges like, kind of berating, like, but usually when the judge is berating someone, you don't get the same pushback from the attorneys, from what I've seen. And sometimes I used to feel bad for lawyers kind of getting, a beat down by a judge, like sitting on the bench with their black robe on and stuff like that. And yeah, there's just a level of respect, and and I'm not saying, like, again, they're not judges in this country and in our history of America who've made the right decisions. So that doesn't mean they're not above, criticism. But yeah, the way this administration is, and then when you sent that to me, I was I forgot where I was. I might have been, I think I might have been in my exercise class or something, and I just said something like, beggars can't be choosers. And then now I realize what you were trying to say. I guess I was saying like, oh, I'm glad the judge interfered. But yeah, you're right. At least they're not saying like, we don't have to listen to you judges, instead of just saying that they're denying that they weren't listening or something like that.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess beggars can't be choosers. At least we got that right. So
Yeah.
no, I totally agree. I mean, I do wonder, at some point it's just going to be like, there's no like rule of law. You know what I mean? Even when you don't agree with the judge and the judge says something, like there's a manner to do it. You appeal a decision and things like that. But this seems like this administration is going to be like, well, the judge said that, it's okay, I can do whatever I want. Right. So I don't know.
Well,
It's I know
so
with this instance they didn't, but I'm just saying in general, I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that we see in the future.
oh, we're heading there, and
Yeah, we're heading.
we're heading. I'm looking right now to see. So, for instance, today, this broke while we're recording. Chief Justice John Roberts spoke hours after President Trump said that the U.S. District Judge should be impeached for blocking the administration's efforts. Excuse me, and he, excuse me, without due process. And Roberts denounced Trump's comment. And this is an important point to make right now, where we stand right now. Donald Trump, pretty obvious, his administration defied the judge's ruling. And then they try to draw a distinction between a verbal order from the bench and a written order. And they essentially said, yes, the planes took off after you made your verbal order, but we're not obligated to follow a verbal order. We're obligated to follow a written order, Rummana, which makes absolutely no sense. The verbal order is what's delivered, and then comes a written order. So what they were cooking up an excuse to avoid saying, yeah, we defied you. And this is my point. At some point, they're just going to go, yeah, we defied you. What are you going to do about it? And that will be a face-to-face crisis, the likes of which that I've never seen.
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone yesterday who's in the publicity game, and what she said, not that she believed it, but from the publicity game, and she said, well, Trump will say they're rapists. So what do you care?
Yeah.
What do you care? First of all, we don't. It's kind of rich, Donald Trump.
I know.
Rapists.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, Donnie. But at some point, you can't. You have to offer some proof. We don't even know who the people are that were deported.
Oh, I know.
They're faceless, nameless people. How do we don't know who they are? How do we know they're rapists?
I mean, yeah, you look at the student from Columbia College, Mahmoud Khalil. I mean, he just protested, right? I mean, I know people are saying, including the Chicago Tribune, that he's a Hamas supporter, but where's the evidence showing that? And so, what is the line? Like, what can you do? Whatever you do to anger the Trump administration, like you protest. I mean, I think it was 2 days ago that JD Vance, there was people protesting the Social Security cuts, and he was just like, don't you people have jobs? Because it was in the afternoon. And it's like, these people, like, anything that, any sort of dissent is just going to be greeted with, well, if we can deport you, we'll deport you. It doesn't matter if you're a green card holder. I mean, I think there's going to be a point where if you're American, they could, they could try to send me back to India or something, or, I don't know. I'm a child of immigrants, right? And, to a lot of people, when they see me, I'm not an American, no matter what I tell them. So I don't know. I don't trust this administration to follow that rule of law. Like if they saw someone that looked like me that protested that was born in America, I don't know what they do. They could jail them, right? And they don't have to prove anything, because we don't know any. The Mahmoud Khalil didn't even break any sort of laws, but he was just taken, and now I think he's in Louisiana. He lives in Manhattan, and it's just despicable. So I don't think, and then some people are okay with it, right? It's like they're defending it.
Yeah.
People that you would think that shouldn't be defending it are defending it. So I don't know. It's a very scary time, and this administration is just going to do what it wants to do. And if someone's going to insult Donald Trump or he feels slighted by them, he's going to go after them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Chicago is, when it comes to funding federal funds and stuff, I mean, I think Chicago's has always been on his shit list. It's the one place where he was booed out of town. And ever since then, he's just been ripping on Chicago, and which is code for Black people, right? Yeah. So it's scary, and I wonder, is anything gonna happen in Chicago? I'm happy that I live in a city like Chicago, in a diverse place. That's the one thing that kind of makes me feel a little better. But it's like a scary time. I was telling my husband Mick, I was like, I'm even scared to start political conversations with people that I don't know that well, because I'm scared to find out what they really think and believe. So I just feel like my conversations with people that I know on a superficial level, I just don't know if I want to talk to them that much. So I'm a talker, but I'm sometimes scared that people are going to disappoint me It's kind of like with the celebrities when you find out that they have certain views that you don't like, and then you end up like not liking them at all, and you don't want to listen to their like watch their movies or like. And I know you have to separate the art from the person, but a lot of times if someone has really like views like say they don't like brown people or black people, it does kind of turn you off. And so I feel like with my fellow Americans, I'm just scared to know what they really think, to like ask too many questions.
Yeah. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. I'll put it to this way: the most obvious point I can make here, there is no consistency to the attitude that Americans have when it comes to issues like this. They bend and their supposed principal beliefs to fit whatever need they have. And this is just a common human behavior pattern. I talk about some of my favorite themes on the show. I think that MAGA is probably as openly guilty of this as any political force I've seen. And this is an essential point I can't make enough. The chief premise of MAGA is freedom and liberty. That's what they're talking about constantly. First Amendment rights, free speech. And what we're seeing now is a complete violation of that principle. And no one from MAGA is standing up for it. No one. Bill Maher's not even standing up for it. He's more worried about the feelings of MAGA supporters. Joe Rogan's worthless in this fight, who's supposedly a great. I've seen his videos that he made about liberty, the essential core of American existence. So, Rummana, I don't know. It's like we're fighting this for these principles, and half the country is supporting the trashing of these principles. And so that's part of why it's such a frightening moment. You follow what I'm saying? Like when Michelle Goldberg, she wrote a column for the New York Times about Khalil being incarcerated and dispatched to Louisiana, and she said that the sad reality, she was condemning it, but the sad reality is probably a popular move with Americans. You know what I'm saying? They like just wrote this guy off as a terrorist. And so, he deserves what he's getting. Okay, if people are paying attention to it at all. So I don't know. I'll ask your thought before we transition out. Do you think, in your opinion, most Americans view it that way? Like, oh well, too bad, you deserve it.
I think it's 50-50 because there's definitely people who are really upset about it, even if they're not necessarily like believe in the same cause or quote unquote cause, like are pro-Palestinian or view it differently. No, a lot of people are speaking out and are upset about it, but I think it's 50-50. I think there's some people who are like, oh well, or they think it's fine, right? It's a brown man getting jailed and detained. And I think for a lot of people, sadly, this is what they want. This is really what they want. And maybe it isn't 50-50, maybe it's 60-40 and 60% of people are okay with it.
Wow, that's freaking frightening. That's really scary if it's 60-40.
No, I know, but I feel like there's definitely a sizable amount of people who are okay with it.
Yeah.
I saw someone from my school the other day, like was retweeting someone who was like, well, yeah, Donald Trump does a lot of people and I don't give a fuck about Mahmoud Khalil. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like one of those things. And so clearly a lot of people feel like that. And so, it's disturbing what people are feeling right now. And so that's what I told you. Sometimes I'm scared to even obviously like someone like you and most of my close friends I can have conversations with, but if I know someone like not that well, I'm kind of worried about like having because then I'm scared that they'll disappoint me in the views of the world.